Located mainly in big cities, fueled by social media hype and profit motives, the techno scene has never been further from its roots. We are now looking at a profit-driven industry, which is far away from a vibrant and social movement fighting for inclusion and environmental awareness. It is time to redefine success and put community over celebrity. Let's reclaim the heart of our culture. Let's empower the excluded. Let's connect and invest in our community. And so, out of a need to return to our core values, the Immersions project was born. It came to life as a collaboration between 4 European electronic music scene communities: FOMO, Monument, Gare, and Kablis. The project earned support from EU Creative Europe programme and strategic backing from the climate tech company, Electrum, who helps us achieve our goals. By bridging techno spots across Europe, we establish a network that brings attention to the overseen artists and audiences of the cultural peripheries. Through Immersions events, a shared music scene emerges, and we grow into a continent-wide community. Our mission is to widen the perspective of the electronic music scene and empower the unsung heroes of the cultural peripheries. How does our system work? Thanks to advanced technology, we craft and share lineups that span across multiple venues. The performances will be shared among cities in real time, enabling artists to perform and interact with the audience at all the venues at once, effectively changing the landscape of the excluded areas of the scene. In this vision, electronic music becomes a unifying force, dismantling barriers and nurturing the cultural peripheries. Simultaneously, interaction portals introduced at every event will enable audiences to engage with each other. One common stage for both artists and the audiences comes to life. In addition to Immersion's hybrid system for our venues, we are introducing a mobile studio and stage designed to reverse the traditional touring model. Rather than requiring multiple artists to travel to major cultural hubs, our mobile studio comes directly to them. We will record DJ sets and live performances which you can later listen to via our Immersions podcast series. The mobile studio can be also transformed into a stage, hosting open-air events live-streamed to the partners' venues. We question the excessive touring practices and monopolization trends, also for the harm they cause the environment. By using new formats for live music distribution, our operational approach will help reduce the carbon footprint of our activities. To further minimize our environmental impact, the mobile studio and stage will rely mainly on its own energy sources. Our dedication to the welfare of society extends to the health of our planet. Throughout the 4-year duration of our project, we will invite you to a broad scope of events: 15 hybrid music events, 8 music workshops, and 4 electronic music seminars. On top of that, you'll have access to over 50 Immersions podcasts, all recorded live from our mobile studio. Join us and let's shape the future of the electronic music scene together. Connect, engage, balance. Immersions, the European hybrid music network for cultural peripheries.
Welcome everyone to this third event in the Immersions series of educational sessions, where we bring together like-minded people from Poland, Lithuania, Portugal and Norway. My name is Halvard Müller. I'm a co-owner of Monument and also the organizer of this event from Oslo. Immersions came to life as a collaboration between 4 European electronic music scene communities: FOMO, Monument, Gare and Kablis. The project earned support from the EU Creative Europe programme and strategic backing from the climate tech company Electrum in Poland, who helped us achieve our goals. We organized this workshop in partnership also with Project New Hope in the location of Białystok in Poland. After the last session, many people stayed on and wanted to discuss and learn more about modular synthesizers. We also received requests on taking a step back and focus on the fundamentals of modular synthesizers. As fascinating as it is, with all the knobs and cables, it can get quite confusing. So, today's session is about the fundamentals of modular synthesizers and how to use that to create techno. And for that, the marvelous Bendik Baksaas has volunteered to demonstrate for us. So, who is Bendik? Well, After years of refining his awareness of emotion and dance, this has led Bendik to finding his unique voice in techno. With a background from heavy metal, Norwegian folk music and jazz, he is currently devoted to bringing the ancient Viking traditions into the nightclubs. As a live performer, Bendik rests in the flux state of improvisation and cherishes the serendipity of being present in the experience of sound. As a producer, he gravitates towards holistic tracks where every detail is essential to the groove. Call and response, action and reaction, a beat with silence in between is the inherent rhythm in everything. And Bendik examines this phenomena in music with playful attention. His new album, Flexcore, will be released on Snick Snack Records in October, and all the workshop participants have been invited to an early listen. All melodies and riffs on that record are from Modular Synthesizers, and the drums are from Ableton. So, in today's workshop, Bendik is going to take us all the way back to the core, to the foundations of modular synths. First, he's going to demonstrate to us how to create the sounds of a kick drum and a hi-hat, some of the most fundamental sounds in techno. Then he's going to create something melodic and use sequencing, which is just a really clever way of playing melodies without being able to play a keyboard. So finally, he's going to show us how he uses these basic elements in his own workflow and how this ends up sounding like proper techno. We're going to have some breaks, short breaks, after each 20 to 30 minutes, and Bendik will guide us through some activating actions. And after that, we will do a Q&A session. And towards the end, about 2 hours from now, you may stay on and try some modular hardware at your location, provided that there is some equipment there. If not, you should try out the VCV rack template already shared with you. Someone at your location should be able to guide you if you have any problems. So, sharpen your pencils, bring out your notebooks, and get ready to learn how to make modular techno. Over to you, Bendik.
Okay, thank you, Halvard, for that lovely introduction. Yes, as said, I'm Bendik Baksaas, and I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to meet all of you people here in Oslo. And of course, very happy to just out there on the internet feel the vibe from Porto and Białystok and also from Vilnius. Hope you are doing great exactly where you are. So, as Halvard said, we will take it really down to the basics. So we can now get the camera angle on the modular synthesizer that I brought with me right here. Exactly, perfect. Okay, so what's going on here? A modular synthesizer is a synthesizer that consists of modules. So each of these different panels is one individual machine. So it is not connected to anything else here before we actively do it with a patch cable. So this is a patch cable that you can see right here. And what a patch cable does is that it sends a signal from one point to another point. It's an electrical signal. In one patch cable can be only one signal at a time. That's why we need a lot of patch cables to make music, but that's okay. We will start with finding a tempo. Okay, let me first very quickly say what we got before actually we find the tempo of the patch. So a patch is the thing that is going on. So if we have a lot of cables, patch cables, we call it one patch. So, and the result will usually be audio. We can hear some sound, and it comes from how we connect all of these different modules. Right here, in this area, we have oscillators. What's an oscillator? An oscillator is a machine that is making a tone. It gives out a continual tone. So one way we can imagine it is this oscillator is kind of like a violin where that as long as the power on the synthesizer is on, it gets electricity. The bow is on the string, and we will hear sound. The reason we don't hear sound right now is that no oscillator is connected to the output of the machine. So now let me connect one oscillator to the mixer, and we can hear it. Ska vi se. Okay, I hope everyone hears that. Now we hear the sound of this oscillator. We can change the pitch manually. Or we can do what modular synthesizers are all about, and that's about modulating. And modulating is kind of, instead of my finger turning these knobs, we get an electrical signal to turn the knob instead. That's what modulation is. Okay, so these are oscillators. They are giving out a tone. Great. These two are VCAs, or rather, every channel downwards here are one VCA. So we have 8 VCAs. What's a VCA? It stands for voltage controlled attenuator. And attenuation is kind of like adjusting the signal to be louder or lower. And sometimes we have so it can be used in its most simple way. It can be used as a way to decide the volume of, for example, an oscillator or any other type of signal. So now it's quite loud, but then I can take it down on this knob here, and now it's very low and gone. Of course, the same thing can I do via this input that I'm pointing at, in sending an electrical signal into this input. We can make this knob turn by electricity instead of hands. So a VCA is very important because when we want rhythm or we want a melody, must be silence, right? Because if we're just listening to one continual tone, then it's a drone, and it can be pleasant to listen to, but usually not so danceable. We need silence to get rhythm. And then, how do we control a VCA? Well, we need an envelope. And what is an envelope? An envelope is this section here is a few envelopes. And an envelope is more or less an instruction to, for example, the VCA of how to open and how to close, right? So instead of me moving it upwards by hand to tell it to open and close the audio and send the electric signal, which in this case is audible sound, to let it through, I want this machine to instruct it exactly how to do it. Is it going to start with a sharp attack and a long decay? It will be boom, boom, boom. Or a maybe slow attack and short decay, and it will be up, up. Or a long decay and long attack and a long decay, then it. Okay, so that's an envelope. And so over here we have some filters, and the filter is a way to usually to treat an audio signal to take away parts of it. So if we send, for example, this oscillator that we just heard, we can send it into the filter and listen to it. Okay, let me just change. maybe so now you hear a quite fat sound. There is both low frequencies, mid frequencies, and high frequencies. And now when I close the high pass, the low pass filter, we hear more of the lows. And if I do it the other way, we can hear only the high part of the signal. And we can use resonance to emphasize the exact point that we are cutting off. Okay, that's a quite nice sound. So that's the filters. And in this section right here is just a few effects. So it's reverb and delay, stuff like that, that we use to make the electronic music live in a space. We put reverb on sounds in electronic music to make it a bit more familiar to sounds that we hear in everyday life, where if my steps are walking, I will always hear the response in the room. And we usually want to have some of that in the electronic music to make it feel like it's happening somehow in a space. And then it's a mixer here with outputs. Last thing that we got in our rack here are two sequencers, two steps. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's okay. They are just similar, but I have one step sequencer here and the exact same here out of sight. And a step sequencer works in that way that we press play, and then it moves through these different steps. As you can see, the red light moves on. On this one, we have one channel up here and one channel down here. So they are two separate signals, or they are two separate channels. Both of them are sending at the same time. They can send two types of, let's say, control voltage, which is just a voltage that is meant for giving information on these modules how to act. All right? For example, if I want the pitch on the oscillator to move up and down without me doing it by hand, I can let the sequencer do it for me by putting the output of the called CV on this sequencer into the oscillator, and then sending the oscillator to the output. Okay, let's hear that. Yeah, so we can hear that it's changing in pitch, and the reason is that we're sending information from the step sequencer. At the same time, of all of these points, you see, for example, this one, when I turn the knob, it will be a higher pitch, or when I turn it down, it will be a lower pitch. But we can use it to control a lot of different things, not only the pitch, but it's one example. The same step also have another button here. If it's lit, it sends out a gate. And a gate is it's a signal. It's a trigger that's only on or off. So it's no if it's very high or if it's a lot of power or less. It's just is something happening or not. So the gate we can use to, for example, trigger an envelope, because the envelope doesn't do anything by itself. It must get the information to start. And when it gets that information, it performs its action by making an envelope, wow, that we then again can send to the VCA to control our sound. Okay, and that's everything that we got here. And now we're going to first make a hi-hat, and then we're going to make a kick, and it will be quite similar way of doing it. So we get to repeat the process. And that's a good time to mention that for everyone listening, if you have a pen and a paper, you are welcome to take some notes, because in my impression, it's the way to learn the easiest way. Then we get to remember it and can look back on it later. Okay, how do we make a hi-hat? That's a good question. We can do it in different ways, but now we're going to do it in the way that I think is the most easy one, and that's by using noise. So then we have, just here in the oscillator section, I also have a noise module, so it outputs just noise. All right? So how does noise sound? Let's see. It sounds something like this. Yeah, that's noise. Quite mesmerizing to listen to, in my opinion. But we have to introduce silence to give it a rhythm. And now that we want to give this a rhythm, we need to find a clock. And how do we find a clock? How do we find a tempo or a rhythm? Like the basic pulse of the track, if you want to say it like that. Well, actually, we can use an oscillator, because an interesting thing that I really like is that our ears and our eyes function in somehow the same way. Because, you know, if you've seen an old school drawn movie, it is pictures that are drawn, right? And we see it fast after each other, and then it looks like it's a moving image. But if we see it in slower tempo, it will look like images after each other. And it's just the same with sound. Okay? So all tones that we hear, if we play them slow enough, it will start to hear like a pulse, like that we can hear the silence in between, and then the tone becomes a rhythm. Okay? That's a really fascinating concept, I think. And a little side note is that in the same way, two tones that have an harmonic relation, for example, a fifth, like the interval between two notes is, if it is giving a harmonic consonance, when we take it down in tempo, it will do the same in rhythm. So then it will be a polymetric or polyrhythm sound, because it gives relation, or because it's consonants when it's tones. Okay, that's just an interesting concept for you to check out on your own. But now we're going to listen first on the oscillator. Okay, it's a continual tone, right? And when we hear it slower, this is a square wave, by the way. We're starting to hear something like a very, very, very fast rhythm. Now it's a rhythm, right? Now it's a rhythm. Yeah? You hear that? Octave jumping. Okay. So we're going to use this oscillator as our clock. Cool. Okay. Now, what I got in this cable right here is a pulse. The pulse that we just heard, right? And I want to control our noise signal with that pulse. So I'm sending the noise into the mixer here. And then I send the pulse to control the VCA. So now the VCA is opening and closing quite fast because the pulse is telling it to do so. So we got a rhythm. Great. Sorry. But we don't want the noise to come in as long as it's silent in just a square wave shape like it does now. So we send the pulse from our oscillator to an envelope generator, and then we can control exactly how the hi-hat is opening and closing. Okay? So then I take the output from the envelope generator into the VCA, and suddenly, if I want a shaker, it can be more like a longer attack, slower attack. Or if I want shorter, it can be like this. Great. Okay, so now we almost have a hi-hat. The only thing is that I think it takes up too much space in the frequency register, in the frequency spectrum. So we need to send the hi-hat or the noise signal to a filter before we send it to the mixer. We send it on the output from the VCA now into this filter, and we send the high-pass signal. High-pass, it's a filter that lets only the high frequencies through. And we send that into the mixer. So let's see. Okay, no sound. That happens sometimes, and we just need to check. Okay, so there, that works. Okay, then we try to send it to another filter and see if that's better. Okay, so here is the original signal, more or less. But we can move the frequency knob further up so that it's only high frequencies coming through. Original. Okay, now it's like a hi-hat, right? Yeah, that's how we do it. And then we can use some resonance on the filter to make it a bit more metallic. And here is just to adjust to taste. Okay, that's fine. So, we have a hi-hat. Also, I'm sending it into an effect module right here, so I can put a little bit of reverb. Just a little bit in the background there. You hear that? Yeah. That's nice. All right. Okay. Are you doing good? Everyone? Yeah. Okay. Now we will start on the kick, on making a kick. And after 5 minutes now, we will have a short 5-minute active break. We will get to do some exercise, because what's most important when we make music that we want to make people move is to be moving ourselves. So that's also a good way to that we can remember, and that these concepts can sink in their own pace. But first, we will start quickly by putting something like a kick. How do we make a kick? Okay, just the same way we need an original sound source. On hi-hat, it was noise. On the kick, it will be an oscillator. So, we will take the output of an oscillator and send it into a VCA, because if you send it straight to the mixer, it will be just a tone, right? And we want a kick. And to have a kick must be silence. So we put the oscillator into the VCA, and we put, now we need actually the pulse that we got from before to sync the step sequencer. We want it to move in time with the hi-hat, right? So when I press play now, you can see that these lights are moving, and it is in tempo with the hi-hat because we use the same pulse signal that we are using to trigger the envelope generator. Okay? Yeah. So it runs in time with the hi-hat. As I said, all of these lights, if they are on, it sends a gate, and if it's off, it does not send a gate. So now, this one are sending a gate on 1 and 5, which will then be our kick, or the signal to our kick, to be more precise. I take the output gate from the step sequencer, send it again to envelope generator, and then I send the envelope from the envelope generator to the VCA. Why do we have no sound? Because we have to plug the output of the VCA into the mixer. And now quite low. Okay, that's almost a kick. It's a low-pitched noise coming in and going out. Yeah? Okay. We can adjust how it comes in by adjusting the envelope. On a kick, we always want a quite sharp start, sharp transient of the sound. And we can decide if we want a long or shorter decay. Okay, we're going to work more on the kick very soon, but first, a little bit exercise. Okay, are you ready? Yes, thank you. Okay, I just trust that everyone that is following digitally are joining us on this. It's an invitation to you to be moving with all of us here in Oslo, and we hope that you are ready for it. Yeah, it will be very easy and very fun, and only for a few minutes. So please give it everything that you got. Okay. So I'm aware that, do you have the possibility to just feel my body in the, yeah, my body. Okay, how are we going to do this? Everyone stand up, please. And this is going to be a little bit tight, but it's fine. Put all the chairs under the, under the table, great. And other person, so, wow. This is cool. Okay, stand opposite to the person closer to you. Yes, and you have this space, and you have this space. So we need something like the space of our body in front of us. So just be creative and find the space of your body on the floor in front of you. Okay, as good as you can. Yeah, looks like we got something going here. Great, thank you. Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, my favorite rave dancing is all about the very old primal moving, right? When you've been dancing for quite a few hours, you usually end up something like this, right? So that's what we're going to practice in some few fun ways. We're going to start, and this is all about actually also the name of my album, Flex Core. It's about the flexibility of the core of our body, right? So we want to move the upper part to the left and the butt to the left at the same time, and then opposite, like we're holding a pencil in this space. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, I also have a good feeling that everyone in Białystok and Vilnius and Porto is doing exactly, looking as beautiful as you do, I'm sure. Okay, first start with going down in squat, and then we're going to move our hands on the floor, but with legs standing still, and moving the core in just this same ravey way, okay? Let's do it. Down in squat, and tip forwards, and give it all you got. Yeah, perfect. And then we just do this in our own tempo. You can add a push-up on the end if you really love to get the stuff going. Okay, okay, wow, this is amazing. I'm so happy right now. This is Norwegian Viking monkeys at its best. Oh! Perfect. Okay, and then everyone stand up. Then the counter to this one will be, we will just go down in squat again. One hand touching the floor and the other for balance, and out with the first one for balance and up again. Does it make sense? Make it as easy and fluent as possible, still like a dance. And just feel how the balance is moving different all the time. And we take one hand always far out to make the moving up as easy as possible. Yeah. Okay, this is so great. Okay. Now, the final exercise that we will do now is standing like this, with hands and feet connected. Then we lift our left hand and right foot at the same time, move it underneath our body, and end up here. Okay? I do it slowly. I'm standing like this, lifting the opposites, twisting slowly my body and end up like this. And again, the same here. And just keep doing that. Make sure to be strong and push away from the floor. Push upwards. It's like an oscillator, yeah. The human oscillation. Yeah, this is a sine wave. Ah. And when you want, you can just switch and do the other way. But just always only 2 points. Or of course you land on 4, but it's most of the time only 2 points are connected. You can do it slowly and find the good rhythm. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm starting to feel warm and happy. I hope you do too. Okay. All right, 10 more seconds and we go back to the modular synthesizer. Yay! Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. I appreciate that. Oh. Halvard, you want to grab me a water, please? Thanks. All right. Where were we? We were making a kick. You hear that, right? Okay, tusen tack. Fantastisk. Okay. How does a kick drum work? It works this way. The fundamental tone that we're hearing right now, that's the size of the tube of the drum. That's how most physical drums work. There's a resonance in the tube that is the drum. And we activate that resonance by hitting the drum skin. Okay? So when the drum skin on top of the tube is hit, it goes down like a trampoline. That makes the pitch higher because it's more tight. So if a guitar string is more tight, it's higher pitched. And when the drum skin is more tight, the pitch is higher. When it releases and go back, it becomes lower in pitch. That's why we get the typical doom, 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 right? That we don't have here in the moment, and we need to make it. How do we do it? Okay. We need to send the information to the oscillator to move from a high pitch to a low pitch, right? Because we send the information, the electrical signal, to the VCA to open and close, to introduce silence. Now we need to tell the oscillator how to act. We will use the same pulse from this step sequencer that is going to the VCA. We will duplicate it by using a stackable cable, like you can see here. It's very nice cables that you can put another cable inside of to get a duplication of the signal. So now the signal goes through this envelope generator that goes to the VCA, and it goes also to this envelope generator. They are two different. And we can use that to adjust how the pitch is moving on the kick drum oscillator. Already we hear something right is happening. Right? Now we got almost everything we need for a kick. I will just put on my headset because it's a bit more easy to hear the perfect place. And then we just adjust these parameters until we get something good. I think that sounds nice. Too short. Too long. It sounds good in the room, but it's too long, I promise you. So we want the R in the kick, but we also don't want the movement to go too slow, right? This is too slow, in my opinion. And this is too, okay, it's kind of cool, but it's a bit too short. We want something in between. Yeah, there we got the Okay, that sounds good enough in my ears right now. And that's more or less a kick drum. Of course, one more thing that's always nice is to send the kick drum into a filter so that we can adjust the transient. And the transient is the first milliseconds of the kick. So we can shape it and make it maybe a little bit different, have a lower pitch, or introduce noise and distortion. And we send the output of the kick into a filter. Audio in, it says on the filter right here. That's the right place to put it. And then we send the output of the filter into the mixer. Now it's more or less the same, but we can move the frequency knob lower and also introduce some resonance. You hear that, right? And again, it's just a matter of taste how you want your transient of your kick. But how I usually do it is that I record separate sounds from the modular and take it into the digital environment for further processing. because you know, it's amazing how detailed and good you can go with plugins. So then it's usually a good idea to keep more of the high frequencies and then think you can take it out later than to record the kick with too little transient, because it's easier to take away than to introduce more. Yeah. I'm just going to check very fast. Yeah, we can adjust it further later, but now we got a decent kick, I think. Perfect. And there's our hi-hat together. Okay. Now, starting to sound like music. I recognize one thing though. You hear in this hi-hat, there is, it's a 16th note hi-hat running, but it doesn't have an offbeat hi-hat. So that we can introduce, or at least make something like it, by sending on this step sequencer. As I said, every channel can send a gate and a value. So a high pitch or low pitch, or mid pitch or whatever, right? Or a gate if it's on or off. And we can use the first thing, the pitch or the CV, which is, it's called control voltage, controlling if the pitch is high or low. We can use that to further give dynamic variation to the hi-hat pattern. So instead of sending the hi-hat straight out, I can send it into another VCA, and to then use the step sequencer to control how loud it is. So if I do it by hand, it'd be like this. Right? Quite cool. But if I do that with a CV from the step sequencer, I can turn these knobs. And then make something like velocity on the hi-hats, right? So if I take the value higher on the 3 and 7, we will get the offbeat hi-hat effect. You hear that? Great. Also, what's always fun with modular synthesizers is to use these duplication cables, these stackable cables, to send control voltage to many different places. And one very natural way to send it is to send the same information to, for example, the filter. So I take it out. The control voltage that was telling the VCA to be stronger on the offbeat notes, like I'm sending that pattern to the filter, but I want the filter that is high passing to go down when it's a stronger signal. So then I need to flip it. I need to make it the opposite. Yeah. So I send it into this channel on Matt's module here. And then I can take it from plus onto minus, and then it becomes the same signal, but opposite. So instead of telling the filter to go up when the intensity of the VCA goes up, I tell the filter to move down when the intensity on the VCA goes up. Yeah? I send it into the hi-hat filter. Yeah, and of course then the VCA information must still come through, so I put it into this stackable cable to duplicate the signal. It's going still to the VCA, but now also to another place, and that's to the filter. You hear that? Then we can adjust how much we want it to move down. I'm now turning up the resonance to let it be more to emphasize the point where the filter is cutting. The resonance now is so loud that it makes kind of like a tone. Can you hear that? It's almost self-oscillating, so it gives a tone into the total sound picture. That's super cool, but if we want it more subtle, we can take the resonance lower, and also the control of how much the electrical signal will control the filter, we can also take that a bit lower. Great. Okay, so I have to just ask you people here in Oslo, does all this, is it okay? Yeah, it makes sense? Yeah, okay, great, I'm happy to hear. There will be a moment on the end of the workshop to ask questions for everyone that is both here in Oslo and also listening with us digitally will also be able to write a few questions. But now, the last part of the modular synthesizer crash course, we can say, is about to begin, and it's about to make a melody. Because we need a riff or a melody, unless it's just drums. That's that's never a bad thing with just drums, but sometimes a little melody can be all right too. So, now I'm going to use this sequencer right here, and I think I can very carefully place it here, and everything's okay. We're going to need more of those VCAs, you know. So, like this, maybe. I think this is actually okay. Yeah. No, I'll just do it like this. It's fun. It's yeah, it's modular. Always different. Always unsuspected things happening. Yeah, so here we have the same sequencer that we're already quite familiar with from here. And we're going to use that sequencer to sequence our melody. Okay, so we do it exactly the same way. Here is another oscillator. It's a little bit different, but it's just the same. It's an oscillator. It oscillates and gives a tone. We can use this tone, maybe. And we put, just to check that we got something, we put it here. Perfect. And then we send it again into the VCA, because we don't want a drone, we want a tone. We want it to appear, disappear, and reappear, which is the basic foundation of music as I know it. Then output to mixer. Okay, a bit louder because of the amplification. We take it down, and that's perfect. Okay, I think that we want to we have a tone. Now we want it to move, to be different tones. Then, firstly, we must synchronize it. So then we take the output of our original oscillator down here that is sending the pulse to the hi-hat and then the same pulse to the oscillator. The good thing about stackable cables like this one, if you can see it, yeah, I think you can see it, yeah, here. The good thing about them is that you can also take it from here. So I get one signal to the hi-hat and then further from the hi-hat into the step sequencer here. But also I can use this output to synchronize this step sequencer. So now this moves in the same pulse tempo as the other step sequencer and the hi-hat. That's a good thing. And then we can send the output of the CV, so control voltage output, send information to the oscillator to move to different tones. You hear that? It's a melody. Then we just twist the knobs on the upper row to get different melody. That will do for now. But still, the tone, the melody, you can hear that? The melody is coming all the time because we have no envelope telling the VCA to open and close. So we need to fix that. So let's send electrical signal from the gate output of the same step sequencer here. And the gates, I just repeat this, are all these red buttons. So if I turn them off, then it sends gate only when it's lit. But now we just send all of them, 16 notes, into this envelope generator right here, just the same as with the hi-hat and the kick. We send this signal into the VCA, and then we got shorter notes in a way. We can decide if we want them to appear sudden or slow. Okay, maybe it's easier to... Yeah. Now I pressed away some of the gates, so it's only sending a gate to the envelope when this one is lit. Yeah. Okay. Starts to sound like a melody, but of course, again, we need a filter because that's too intense to listen to for a long time. So we put it audio in on the filter, and then we send the filter not to the mixer, but we send it first to this effect module to get some delay and reverb. I will put that later, just one moment. So to hear the filter now. Great. Now I introduce resonance. And then I introduce the effect here, some delay and reverb. Yeah, great. And yeah, so that's a melody. And another great thing that I'm sure if you're playing, if you ever played a traditional synthesizer on a MIDI keyboard, for example, you know that it's 3 different informations on the same time when you're playing. When you press one note, it sends a gate. So it tells the synthesizer to open and close the sound. And which key you press on the synthesizer tells if it's a high-pitched note or a low-pitched note. And most synthesizers and inside our digital audio workstation, we usually also work with velocity. So how strongly is the sound coming through? That's really important to get the groove going in hi-hats and in melodies and stuff like that, to have some dynamic variation in the strength of the signal. So how can we manage that in modular synthesizer? Of course, again, we use the VCA, okay, the voltage controlled attenuator. So we just take the signal from the melody. Okay, just to make it easy, now you hear it's on every single beat, right? Taka 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 taka, or every single 16 notes. But I don't want it to be just as strong on every 16 note. So I will send it to another VCA, output from this VCA, and send it just on input to another one. And now it should be just the same, because no one is telling the VCA to open and close. So that's why I need to send CV from the next channel here to tell the VCA to open and close, or how much to do so. So if I put all of them up, it will be just the same. But now I can take some of them lower to make a rhythm in it, or to have a melody and gradually introduce it. Okay, sounds good. Now only some of the notes we can hear. That's good. Makes it more dynamic, and we can change it around in the track. Okay. Last thing on this patch, because now we got a kick, a hi-hat, and a melody, just like we wanted, and we use the same process to make every type of sound, right? The signal goes the same route, more or less. Of course, with modular synthesizers, we can all the time just go crazy with patch cables without knowing what we're doing. It usually can't be destroyed. The worst thing that can happen is nothing happens. So that's when we start to have fun, by just taking an output from somewhere and putting it into somewhere else and see what happens. And if this is not techno enough for you, then a good idea will always be to use frequency modulation. So again, we take the output from another oscillator that has not been used yet, and we send it into the melody oscillator. So now it will already get pitch from the sequencer, information of how pitch will be, but we'll also give it a very fast information from the oscillator to move up and down super quickly. And we can use this knob to make it to make the parameter go from 100% to 0, or to just a little bit. And then you get this familiar FM sound, more percussive. And you can adjust the tone on the oscillator that we're using for the frequency modulation to make it different. Yeah. Yeah, and there you have it. That's how to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. So then I guess it's time for a short active break again, and then we do something else. Okay? Yeah, sure. yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Well, that's a great thing because I wanted to show. Okay, that's a perfect thing because I'm going to play a little bit of music for you. So then we can move to the other station and we just go straight into a little bit more music, and we use that to do the exercises. Okay, so just to tell very shortly, Joao, do you want to just film here for one moment? Now we have made some music on the modular synthesizer. How will I usually use it in my life? Well, I will record the different sounds, usually one at a time, and put it into the computer and work further with it from there. That's how I like to do it. But when I play live, because I've had the pleasure of playing on quite a few of Monuments events through the years. And on their parties, I've done everything from playing only modular synthesizer to playing only on the computer and prepared tracks. And what I think was the best set was last year on their city festival here in Oslo. And that's when I combined the two. Because just like we experienced here, or finding the right tune on the kick and the length can be really difficult in the room. Because always you're standing in a different place and you have a long resonance, and it's hard to tell how the bass actually, if it is good or not, because you're just standing in one place. So that's why when I play gigs now, I like to combine the two, like my work as a producer with my work as a live improvising artist. So I bring this modular synthesizer that is made not to make drums, only to make a melody or a riff, and I combine it with drums on Ableton that I play through this DJ mixer. And I have a few effect pedals as well, but those are details. So in that way, I can use drums that are prepared, and I know that they will work as long as the sound system works. I can use that to improvise together with making melody on the spot on the modular synthesizer, and also include longer parts or whole tracks that I've produced. So that's a hybrid way of playing that I really find very enjoyable and challenging, and also sounds good. So I'll do a little bit of demonstration on that now. And then that's the invitation to, again, everybody stand up, find the space in front of you, because yes, you are allowed to dance, but that's later. First, we will do the gym exercises, just because it's nice to get some very clear instructions, yeah? And then when you are too tired from doing these 3 exercises, but stay at least 1 or 2 minutes in each exercise, do it in your own tempo. Then just end up in this classic rave dance or whatever dance you would like. And then, yeah, let's do that for 10 minutes or so, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I use the modular synthesizer, and we open for some questions after that. Okay, thank you. Squat down and move forwards like you're climbing on the floor. Do that for 2 minutes. Then down and backwards squat like this. Yeah. And then finally the switch crawl. Okay, now Now it's up to you, and I trust you, my friends in Porto, in Vilnius, and Białystok. Please join us. It's time for some fun. Yeah! Thank you so much. Yes, it was a big pleasure to be able to play a little bit of my music for you. And as you can see, what I used here was just the same principles as when we made the modular patch together. And yeah, but no drums. All of the, or like hi-hats, kicks, sub-kicks, stuff like that came from Ableton. It's made with 909 from inside Ableton, and the distortion and saturation drum bus, the favorites. And also some drum sounds made on the modular synthesizer in studio. But then it's prepared and it's always made in good balance so that the call response between the sub and the kick is always friendly enough to leave some air so that we can dance, right? Because if it's too much bass, we can't dance. At least that's how I feel. And yeah, the synthesizer is constructed more or less like the last patch we did, so that I have some different sources of audio, oscillators. And I use a step sequencer in the same way. One row to decide the pitch, and another row to decide the velocity, how strongly the signal comes through the VCA or not. And reverb and delay, filter, that's it. Yeah, so I think just give me one moment to put this microphone the right way, because I was a bit confused now. Yeah, and we're back on. Yeah, so what I wanted to say just finally before we open for questions is I really loved the workshop of Michael Wolski that had the last workshop in modular. And the intention with this modular workshop that we did now is kind of to be a part one to his part. So if that was too complex or there was some concepts you didn't understand, then maybe you can watch this workshop first and then go back to his workshop, because I think he touched on a lot of important ideas and things that I agree with, and I think this is very good for further exploration. And I just want, before we open for questions, I wanted to say that the thing with a modular synthesizer is a little bit fun, because I got into it because I started doing hardware and loved that. And I loved the limitations of hardware. So you can't have 100 tracks, and you need to be very economic with how you're going to organize your sounds. But the thing with Eurorack Modular is that you can always buy more modules, and you can always buy another case. And that's what happens if you have the money for it. So just be warned that it's good to, if you go into this stuff, it's good to have a clear idea of what you want to do with the modular synthesizer. What is the intention? Because if it's just to spend money, then you can do that, but it won't give you any music. What you need to do is to get a few modules, and the stuff that we walked through today is enough. Of course, you don't need as many. You can do a lot with only one oscillator, one VCA, one envelope generator, one filter, and effects you don't need because you have it in the computer, but maybe one step sequencer, so 5 different things. But what's even better is to get a semi-modular synthesizer like this one. So this one is my favorite. It's from Make Noise, the same company that makes mats, the one module that we used a lot for envelope generators. And this is a synthesizer all in its own. So what you see here is like 7 different modules. And it's oscillator, envelope generator, and the same type of concepts that we've been working with today. So with only this synthesizer and maybe a step sequencer and the computer, you can make a lot of tracks. And actually, recently I just did. I went on a family trip and brought only this one and the sequencer that we used and the laptop. And most of the nights I made one track using only sounds from here. So you can make a hi-hat from here, you can make a kick here, you can make toms, you can make snares, and you can make melody. So it's just about being creative with the limited thing. So that's also how I designed the modular case that you heard me using now in the short performance, is that I try to imagine what do I need in the live situation and how to make it as easy as possible, because we don't want a very complex patch with a lot of different sounds. A few people on the internet manages to do it, but it takes quite a few years of experience to do that. So and also I feel that it's nice to include what we make in the studio, because that's also a true part of ourselves, not only what we are able to improvise in the moment with a lot of people around, little light, and variation in what quality of monitoring you got, stuff like that. So that's my advice. If you want to get into modular, of course, VCV rack and this synthesizer, or maybe the Moog D-FAM. It's also a great semi-modular synthesizer. But yeah. So I think that's everything I wanted to say in the workshop. But if we have some questions, I'm very happy to answer that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bendik. We will now move on to the Q&A session where you can ask questions to Bendik, and we will do that by Slido. And in order to enter your questions, you can scan. Can we get this screen on in the room as well? Scan the QR code. Enter your name and your questions. They will appear on my screen, and I will pass them on to Bendik. And the same goes for everyone, regardless of Białystok, Porto, or anywhere else in the world watching us right now. If we then switch to, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So if there's some questions in the room, we can start with that before we get from our digital friends. Yeah, tell me. Yeah, Monica, the absolute beginner. Tell me, Monica. Mm.
And how do I know that I still connect the hi-hat and not the kick?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just repeat. So you're asking about how I organize the different signals of sound. Is that correct? Or
Yes. So let's just use the terminology you told us, the hi-hat. How
yeah.
to create a
Yeah.
hi-hat and then kick.
Yeah.
And you play them together.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't say too much about that, but that's the mixer. So a mixer is a module that you can send many different sounds into it. Like it's kind of like a DJ mixer, where you take up the fader on one track and up the fader on another track, and then you hear two tracks at the same time. And on the mixer here, I didn't talk too much about it, but it was here on the far left side of our rack. And that's just a module that combines audio signals so that they can send both the kick and the hi-hat and the melody to the same output. So all of that comes out of the same two stereo cables and into my DJ mixer. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Yeah. You definitely also need a mixer, but that's only if you want to make more sounds at the same time. But for me, as I mentioned, I usually work with only one signal. So when I play live, I have the drums on the computer, and then I improvise one melody. But I have a mixer to combine a few melodies, but yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible. And when I make tracks as well, I don't want to record the whole thing that is going on as one master track, because then it's really hard to work with later. But when I take one sound at a time, then I can add effects to only the hi-hat, for example, which I really like.
So we have a question from Anonymous. Where did the noise come from? The one you used before?
To make the hi-hat, I guess.
I assume so.
Yeah. That's a module. It's a module that outputs noise. So it's analog noise. So that's why you heard it's not all the same all the time. It's a bit variation. But exactly how they make the noise module, I don't know. But I guess that they take... it's just something that, as far as I understand, when the connection is a little bit bad, there appears noise, and then you can use that as a sound source. But this module is made specifically to output noise. So I have an output that says noise, and then I can put it into the filter and VCA to make a hi-hat. Yeah.
Another great question. What was the biggest fuck up you have ever done with a gear while performing live, and how did you manage to get out of that stressful situation?
It's been so many, you know. It's hard. It's hard to choose between your children, but I've definitely had some tough moments. But of course, you know, I mean, it's just when there is no sound. That's always the worst thing, when you do something and suddenly the sound goes away and you have no idea why. And usually it's a cable that's a little bit loose, or you accidentally touched a knob in the darkness that was like on a very specific point, and if that's different, then everything is gone, and you don't know how to do it, and then the same loop goes on for a long time. That can be intense. But the way I handle that is, as I said, to always bring also the computer with Ableton with pre-prepared drum tracks, drum loops, and also whole tracks. So that if the modular goes completely wrong, I can just put on a track that I made and get a few minutes on the headset to just sort through. Start with the oscillator. Is it outputting sound? Yes. And then VCA. Is it working? Yes. The envelope generator. It was the envelope was so short that we couldn't hear the signal. Okay, good. And I realized that on the headset. That's usually how I like to do it.
Then
Yeah.
Carolina says hi, and she wanted to congratulate you, and she said this was super practical and engaging and fun. And she also wants to know, how long did it take you to create your first wholesome track?
You mean how long time of practice, or like how many hours for that specific track? Yeah. I don't know. I've been making tracks for for so long, but of course the first tracks were super crazy and avant-garde, and I don't know if how it would sound now, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I think that actually it's quite easy to make a track. What's difficult is to make a good track. And then the only thing that you have to do is to make tracks. So don't be too concerned if they are good or bad tracks, because that you can decide later. So try to just make tracks, and then gradually they will increase and get better. And at some point you will just feel that, I found my voice. This is me. Now I know what elements I need in a track. I need the hi-hat, I need this stuff, and I know what's too much. And suddenly it becomes natural. But definitely it takes years of practice to get to that point. But I think the only way to get to that point is to make tracks and finish tracks. You can't get there by only making loops. So you have to just arrange it through, make the 5-minute track. If it's horrible, have a stupid melody, it's fine. You don't have to show it to anyone, but finalize it, bounce it out, and hide it on your hard drive, on a safe place where no one can find it. Yeah.
Then we have two questions I'd like to see in combination. The first one is, how can one better understand the signal as a waveform? For example, to understand or visualize a square or a sine wave. And that should be seen in connection with the next, I think, which is, could you say something about the VCV rack template prepared for us? Because that VCV rack template actually shows both the triggers, the gates, and what the resulting sound looks like. So for everyone who's downloaded and installed VCV rack, you'll be able to see just that. But maybe, Bendik, if you could add something to the first part of the question, how do you better understand the signal as a waveform?
Well, I mean, as mentioned in the start, every signal that goes through one of these patch cables that we have been using is an electrical signal. It's a current, yeah? And the current is, that's what's beautiful, because when we started this synthesizer that we have here, it was not connected at all, and it was just a lot of, you can imagine it like people that didn't know each other from before, right? And had nothing to do with it, never seen each other, never gone past on the street. But now it's a community, right? Now it's a lot of people with intention on doing one thing together, yeah? And that's what the patch cables are. It's the electrical current that connects us. So when I touch your hand, we are actually exchanging electricity. You can see that when you touch a fence, when for the horses, that's electrical, you know, that's electricity, you felt it. And we all of us have electricity in us in the same, in exactly this moment, as long as we are alive. And when you touch each other or are close, this electricity jumps from one to the other. And it's exactly the same with the modular synthesizer. When it comes to waveforms, as in an oscillator's waveform, as far as I understand it, you can think of an, if you see like a guitar string that is plucked, right? It has its 0 point, and that's when it's just still. That's when it's just a line. But when we pluck it, if you see it in slow motion, it will move in waves like this. And if it goes exactly in circles or how it moves in 3D, I'm not sure, but it moves in a smooth way. And it gives out audio pressure. So it moves the sound. So the power, the force from the string moves the sound and makes the sound move in waves, which is called sound waves. And then the sound waves can reach our eardrum, and we can perceive it as sound. But it is pressure in the air moving as waves. And it's just the same with the electrical current, as far as I understand it, just to be clear on that. So it is a signal that has its 0 point, and it's just silence. And when we put power and take the output from the oscillator, the oscillation goes up and down between, I'm not sure, plus and minus maybe, and we have an oscillation going, and we can hear it. I'm sure some of you have more understanding of the electrical details than me, but that's how I like to imagine it. Yeah.
Someone also asks you if you can repeat what the base modules are that you should start up with in a modular world.
Yeah. Well, this semi-modular synthesizer is called the O-Coast or the Zero Coast from Make Noise. It's a great synthesizer that I made many tracks with, only this one, but as I said, one sound at a time. Hi-hat at one time, kick at another time, recording, layering, and putting plugins in or audio devices in Ableton, and melody and bassline and everything. You can do all with it. But if you want to go straight into the real or the UREC modular, then what you need, in my opinion, is one oscillator. And Dupfer is a great brand because it's quite cheap and really good products. Ladik is another one a bit cheap that is really good. So an oscillator, a VCA, or usually a VCA module with more VCAs, like the ones we used in this example. They had 4 VCA channels because you usually need a few VCAs. You will need a function generator or an envelope generator. My recommendation is Make Noise Mats. It's a great module that I love so much. I would love to come back for a workshop only on that module, but that's another story. And that's what we use to make the envelopes of the hi-hats, like to make that shape to the VCA information. You need something like that. And Mats is a very versatile module to use for many, many, many things. Then I also think that you need a filter, and I think the Dupfer SEM filter or WASP filters that I used here are great. They're not too expensive, and they sound absolutely great. And you need, I guess, you need a sequencer. And then I think again that the SQ1 from Korg that we used here is a great sequencer, step sequencer that you can get 2 channels or one longer if you prefer, and use it to to make melodies and to make rhythms and modulations, a lot of things. So that's the 5 things that you need, and further you also need to record this signal, in my opinion, or you don't need to, but if you want to make tracks, you need to get it into the computer, but maybe you have an audio interface from before, or you should get that. Also might be a good idea to have a module like this that that is kind of converting the signal from, because the modular strength of signal is very high, so you want to lower that at some point to make it into what we call a line signal, so it doesn't blast your audio interface or mixer totally. So yeah, an output module would also be a good thing, but you can survive with just using a VCA and take it a bit low. So that's the 5 things: oscillator, VCA, envelope generator, filter, sequencer, right? And if you can, also an output module. And with that, you will be fine. Then you can make tracks for years and years and years and just get it into Ableton or whatever DAW you like and do all the effects and device further processing there. Yeah.
2 more questions before we round off. Are you able to repeat the patch sounds you create ever?
Yeah, no, as Michael Wolski told in the last workshop, that's impossible. It will always be a bit different, and that's the charm. So it's that's why it's a good thing to record it if you really like it, because you'll never hear the exact same music again.
Then finally, do you think techno is the easiest music type you can do with a modular synth setup?
Yeah, well, I mean, the easiest is always like ambient or noise music or drone music, in my opinion, because then it's kind of not so much about design and rhythm and groove and call response, all these things. It's more about exploration of basic synthesis in a way. So then you can have only an oscillator straight to the mixer with just a slight modulation on the pitch, and if you add some reverb and delay and other effects, it can be really interesting to hear for a long time. Like the track, I don't know if you digital friends heard it, but like the Brian Eno song that we heard in the opening, New Space Music, that's made with just oscillators phasing. So it's oscillators that's almost the same pitch, and then they are phasing, and so the tones like fade in and out, and it's super interesting and comfortable to listen to for a long time. So that's maybe the easiest genre to start with, ambient or experimental noise maybe. But I think then the next easiest would be techno, yeah, because it's really made for that, or techno was made from that, or I don't know, but it's really a close relation, and it's one of those techno is one of those genres where many times the more raw the tracks are, the better they are, because you end up with just the essence, and here you have the opportunity to really fine-tune the details and get exactly like the sound that you want. Or I always need to work more with it on the computer, but I can get like the raw material that sounds like super interesting and powerful and full of emotion and the uplifting rhythm. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bendik. This concludes the 3rd Immersions session. Thank you all for attending. I hope you found it both interesting and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter if you want to be kept informed of upcoming events. And please click like and share the video recordings, which will show up on YouTube soon. See you next time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.